Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first session, part A of the Informs MIF 2024 Summer Webinar Competition. Oh, let me put this in full screen. Okay, great. So as we wait for a couple of more attendees to join us, I just want to briefly introduce this. This is the first of two sessions where we're going to be showcasing the research of our PhD students, our MIF Minority Issues Forum PhD students. And for today, we're going to have 5 fantastic students. We're going to have Sekun Chen, Xiaokong Gao, Carmen Hasseltine, Raymond Kudzawu III, and Shenghai Li. And as I briefly tell you about where they are in a moment, I invite you to scan the QR code that you see on the screen where you'll be able to vote for your favorite presentations and give our students some feedback as well. So this is also the order in which we're going to go. We're going to start with Sekun Chen, who's a second-year PhD student in the Thayer School of Engineering at Dartmouth College. We're going to continue with Xiaoquan Gao, PhD candidate in Industrial Engineering at Purdue University. Then we will go with Carmen Hasseltine, PhD candidate in Electrical Engineering at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And then Raymond Kudzawu III, who's a PhD student in Operations Research and Engineering at the Colorado School of Mines. And then Shenghai Li, who's a PhD candidate from Fuqua School of Business at Duke University. Each of them is going to have a total of 11 minutes to present their research and to answer a couple of questions. And I think with this, we're ready to start. So, Sekun, the floor is yours. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Got it. May we start right now?
Yes, you can start.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sekun Chen. I'm a second-year PhD in Dartmouth College. And the topic of my presentation today is the explainable machine learning-based prediction of depression severity in medical students. First, let's talk about the background and motivation of my project. Medical students tend to exhibit depression and depression symptoms at a higher rate compared to the general population. This is because medical schools tend to be very intense and competitive, so it's easier for medical students to develop some depression symptoms. Also, depression can reduce academic performance and increase the risk of suicide and physical health problems. Hence, understanding sources of depression can help us resolve issues within the structure of medical education. For example, we can do something like revising the medical school's curriculum to make it be more beneficial for medical students' mental health. Now let's talk about the overall objective of the project. The first level of the objective is to predict the severity of depression among medical students. The second level objective is to identify the key biopsychological factors influencing the severity of depression among medical students across the United States. Here, our focus is on the United States because our dataset only contains data points of the United States. The third level of objective is to apply our prediction results to build a Markov decision process, which serves to build the decision-making models. This objective is not reflected in my presentation today, but I'll use the prediction results to build the decision-making models for my second phase research in PhD. As for the design and setting of the project, first, our prognostic study is built upon the survey data from a platform called Healthy Mind Studies Student Survey, spanning the academic years of 2009 to 2021. Basically, the Healthy Mind Study is a platform that collects students' mental health data. The American Students' Depression Severity is measured using a metric called Patient Health Questionnaire 9, which is PHQ-9. For this metric, it can return a score ranging from 0 to 27. The higher the score is, the more severe the student's depression is. Also, all the undergraduate and graduate students from the United American universities participating in the Healthy Mind Study are included in our study. However, before we dive into the modeling part, we first need to pre-process our data. The first step is to exclude variables with more than 60% records missing, because we notice that with a very high missing rate, it's hard for this variable to convey accurate information for our modeling. The second step is that variables with 50% to 60% record missing rate are labeled as unknown, which is just another level for these variables. In the remaining variables, we exclude records with any missing value, and we end up with final included records around 168,000. Here is a pipeline of our data pre-processing process. It includes the initial data exclusion, the data division, and FIFO cross-validation process. Now let's dive into the modeling part of the project. We explore several predictive models such as the multinomial neural network, the sequence of binary charge boosts, ordinal logistic regression, and support vector ordinal regression. And we find that for multinomial neural network and sequence of binary charge boost models, they give the best mean absolute error, which is MAE. However, don't forget that our final goal is to find the best explainable model. So we should also take a look at the model's explainability. And we notice that for the sequence of binary charge boost model, it tends to give some important variables such as diagnosed with depression error or not, some very high importance score. But for model of multinomial neural network, since neural network tends to lack explainability, it gives some small, very low scores for important variables. So it doesn't make sense anymore. So we end up choosing the sequence of binary charge boost models as the best explainable model. And here to compute the importance score of our variables, we use a method called permutation importance. Basically, this method means for a certain variable, we shuffle its value first, which is shuffling the values of this column. Then we recompute the MAE of the model. If the new MAE is significantly higher than the old one, it means this variable is very important for our predictive model. Here's a box plot of our MAE for 4 models. As we can notice, the multinomial neural network and sequence of binary charge boost models have very similar MAE, ranging from 3.1 to 3.2. The second level of our objective is to identify the important factors. And according to the sequence of binary charge boost models, it reveals several factors such as diagnosed with depression ever, eating disorder, financial status, and age group significantly impact the depression symptoms. However, interestingly, we find that younger age is associated with increased depression severity. And we did some literature review about this phenomenon. And we find that the reason for it is that for younger medical students, it's harder for them to have mental maturity to deal with some difficult situations. And their mental conditions always fluctuate a lot. That's a reason why it's easier for them to develop depression symptoms. Here, as we can see in the important score plot, diagnosed with depression ever, score of eating disorder, current financial status, and age group are our top 4 variables. Here's the conclusion of the whole project. First, we identify predictors of student risk for developing depression symptoms. Also, our findings can help facilitate early identification of medical students at risk for developing depression symptoms. Basically, as a rule of thumb, if a student has PHQ-9 higher or equal than 10, it means this student has a certain level of depression. So we need to take some actions for this student. So for our model, we can fit the predictors in and give the students predicted depression score. If it's greater or equal than 10, we need to take some action. We also provide medical students with early support and proactive strategies to prevent future depression episodes. When it comes to the promising directions, including fair depression prediction, it includes fair depression prediction and fair decision making. That's all about my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so I
Thank
have one
you.
question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Nikki, please.
Please.
We have
Yeah,
space
so
for one
thank you
question.
for the great presentation. I have just a quick question. Can you provide us with like some additional information about who is participating in this health survey? Like I'm just worried about the selection bias. Because let's say that kind of if I'm already like very depressed, I would be more more incentivized to fill out this survey, right? Such survey. So if that's the case, so the result may actually overestimate things. And overall, I'm just trying like to see how you handle selection bias in the survey, because not every student is participating in this survey. Maybe they need to have certain characteristic to be like to have the incentive to participate.
For this entire data set, it's not only include medical students, it also include
True, but
undergrad.
even like I understand that you have data that is coming from non-medical students that I understand. But then just for me to understand, is it required that every medical student participate in this survey? Perhaps no.
It's not.
No, okay. So is it like so it's not mandatory, right?
Yes,
So if it's not mandatory, so there would be like selection biases, right?
I
That
got the
somehow
point.
your model needs to capture who are the people that actually have are more incentivized to participate in this survey, in such like her survey. So do you have like some insight into this?
Yeah, for this part, I actually had a conversation with Professor Marrero, and we think maybe good approach is to, for example, resampling some data and yeah, and we can also see if our, oh, you mean selection bias. Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's a good point. I'll give more thought about it after the presentation, but thank you for offering that.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Sigmund and Nikki. So we will continue with our following speaker, Xiaoguang Gao.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I appreciate this opportunity to share my research. And I'm Xiaoquan Gao, currently a PhD candidate at Purdue University School of Industrial Engineering. And I will be joining Singapore Management University as an assistant professor of operations management in next January. And today I will be talking about my research on data-driven analytics for social good, with a focus on the criminal justice system. This is a joint work with my advisors, Dr. Pengyi Shi and Dr. Nan Kong. Here is how our work is motivated. In United States, in the county jails, the inmates are mainly offenders with only minor crimes, and the majority of them have either substance use disorder or mental health issues. This group of population, instead of getting treated, they are arrested and incarcerated because of these minor crimes. As a result, when they get out of jail, these underlying problems still exist. So with a high probability, they will quickly recommit a crime and going back to jail again. This high recidivism rate means recommit a crime, leads to the jail overcrowding. And what makes the reality even worse is that when jail is more crowded, it will increase the interaction between these inmates. It makes them share the cell and increase the interaction among them. This actually increases the recidivism because jail is kind of the best university for criminals. So here recidivism and jail overcrowding forms this vicious cycle. The good news is that we now have an alternative to jail, that is community corrections, or we call CC. Instead of just the punishment in jail, CC provides treatment, education, and life skill training for its participants to reduce their recidivism risk. It sounds like a perfect solution to help everyone and solve these underlying problems. But the problem is that in reality, we always have limited resources everywhere. Also at CC, if we divert too many individuals to CC, we will have these case managers overburdened. As a result, they will loosen their supervision on these individuals and have these individuals' recidivism increase, which is an unintended consequence of CC. Actually, even though we have enough resources, we have a complicated trade-off to deal with. That is, CC is not a traditional incarceration place. Unlike jail, the individuals can still commit a crime under the supervision. So here this is the safety concern. So our research question is that who to be diverted to these CC programs? The current practice is that the judge will look into the risk profile of each individual and then make this placement decision. One drawback of this decision is that it's too siloed and individual focused, so it may lead to some unintended consequences from the jail congestion and the CC case manager overburden. So what we propose is to combine this individual-based policy with the system view to consider the negative impact from the system congestion, especially for this group of people in the gray area who are currently receiving mixed decisions from different judges. We add a system consideration layer for these individuals. How we did it, how we consider these two parts. First, the jail diversion decision in criminal justice is an understudied problem in the criminal justice, in the operations research. So our first contribution lies in the model formulation, where we formulate a novel Markov decision process model. And based on a salient feature of this MDP model, we analyze the structural properties analytically to derive some managerial insights. And in the process of derivation, we propose a novel unified MDP value function analysis approach to which goes beyond our specific application to have independent technical interest. Finally, based on the structural understanding and of these complicated trade-offs, we propose an efficient algorithm based on this novel dimensionality reduction and reinforcement learning to provide a really actionable solution. And we are currently in the phase of implementing this solution into real practice by collaborating with the community correction center in our local county. And I will talk about this model structure and algorithm in the remaining few minutes. First, the MDP model. The two salient features is that, driven by the preset sentence term, we have a deterministic service time. It's no longer exponential service time that is memoryless. And secondly, to consider the negative impact of congestion, we have occupancy-dependent costs. That is the recidivism and the holding costs increase convexly with the occupancy. So this two, based on the two salient features for this novel MDP, we derive the major analytical result, that is the superconvexity of the value function in each class length of state combination. It has a very important implication, that is, with this superconvexity, if we have a batch decision, the value function only has one local optimum that we know is also globally optimal. This kind of convexity or superconvexity result might not be a huge surprise in this kind of MDP models, but remember that we have this non-memoryless system dynamics and nonlinear cost functions, which makes analyzing it analytically challenging. We address these challenges through developing this unified MDP value function analysis approach through system coupling and policy deviation bounding. Then we, based on this superconvexity, we define this efficient algorithm based on the transformed MDP. First, based on the separation of timescales, we reduce the dimensionality of this high-level MDP to very tractable, only a few thousands, and then solve it with a policy, with actual creative policy gradient algorithm, which is known to be able to converge to the local optimum. With this value function superconvexity, we know what we find through this algorithm is guaranteed to be global optimum. With this analytical structure, we estimate our impact through a simulator, and this simulator is calibrated based on the real data from our collaborator, the Tippecanoe County Community Corrections. And here, the Tippecanoe County is where Purdue University is located at. On this simulator, we estimated that our approach can reduce the recidivism and violations in 3 years significantly. Also, because we are reducing this recidivism, we are also reducing the total size of population in the criminal justice system, so that we can also reduce the caseloads of the case managers, and so that we can mitigate this congestion. Beyond this analytical and the simulated results, we are also currently actively working with the director of TCCC to really implement our results. Currently, the director, Jason, has used our result on the cost effectiveness analysis on the decision of how many case managers to hire to support their future budget planning in our town hall meeting. And we are undergoing design this user-friendly dashboard to visualize the occupancy and provide an interpretable machine learning result for the recidivism risk, as well as the placement decisions through this user-friendly dashboard. And we really want to implement it into real use so that we can really have some impact from our algorithm and analytics. And this is a work in progress. So to summarize, to tackle this important and but somewhat understudied problem in the criminal justice system, we propose a novel modeling framework through Markov decision process model and provide this analytics-based decision support to tackle the complicated trade-off in this system and avoid the unintended consequences from overlooking the system impact. And our simulation shows that our approach can reduce the recidivism rates, and our result has been used by the executive director of the community correction center in our local county to guide their future staffing planning. We hope this work can serve as a foundation for future research in the criminal justice system. And here I end my presentation and open to questions.
Thank you, Xiaoguan. We have time for one question.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question.
Yes, please.
So this model,
Mm-hmm.
how long has it been in use with, I guess, could you go back to your slide with the sponsor? How long has Jason used this model?
Currently, what's being really used in practice is our staffing planning. They hired more, they get more funding from state government based on our analysis. And this tool, this really individual-based placement tool is still undergoing the pilot study. We are talking to the case managers and the other coordinators to improve it. It hasn't been really into use yet, but it's in pilot part.
Okay. So they've gotten more resources to help with their community corrections program. Is that what you were saying?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they get more case. They get more case managers, which alleviate their congestion, so they can more efficiently supervise the participants in TCCC. And another result is that because they hire more case managers, they can intake more individuals diverting from jail to reduce this of recidivism.
Okay, very good. Great talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And then we can go to our next presentation from Carmen Hasseltine.
Sorry, I'm trying to get it to play. Just move. There we go. All right. Hello, I am Carmen Hazeltine, and I'm talking to you today about risk modeling and analysis of voting by mail systems. So a quick information about me. I'm a PhD candidate in electrical engineering at the University of Wisconsin-Madison with an anticipated defense of May 2025. My thesis focuses on risk modeling of cyber-physical systems, specifically critical infrastructure systems, and that includes election infrastructure, under the research advisor, Professor Laura Albert. And prior to my graduate studies, I spent several years in the power system utility industry. So why today am I talking to you about voting by mail? Well, it's because in recent years, there's been a lot of scrutiny surrounding voting by mail. And right now, election season is in full swing, and election administrators are very unsure of the best path forward for their voting by mail procedures. They want a secure election, but it's very unclear of quite how to get there. Our research addresses these concerns by developing a very straightforward methodology to assessing and mitigating the risk associated with voting by mail. There is a history between operations research and U.S. voting systems that expands even much prior before this paper and this work. This includes the in-person voting, which has been really well covered, a lot of queuing theory models that study like in-person voting with how many machines, polling machines you need, polling resource allocation. However, it does not really look into voting by mail as much for utilizing queuing theory. For that, when we look into voting by mail, these models tend to be process models. There was a Dropbox location study that was around. And of course, the most known is voting systems risks associated with threat trees and attack trees that were developed by the Election Assistance Commission in the US. Our research expands on this knowledge to manage risks in a dynamic system rather than a static one. So just a little bit more on existing voting by mail risk models. The models we have now, from 2009, the Election Assistance Commission published a huge book of attack trees associated with quantifying risks associated for voting by mail. In 2022, Professor Scala expanded on these trees to add upon drop boxes and in-person absentee. So attack trees is really the way that risk is looked at. So looking at what is an attack tree, the main things to take away is just know that they are Boolean and they are static. They give you a one system snapshot of what's going on. Our approach in our research takes a more dynamic view. We utilize a discrete time Markov chain, just the basic stochastic process. The input to the model is ballot requests, and the output is 6 potential final ballot states. The model itself is separated into 3 core layers, starting with the process layer that identifies the actual process of the voting by mail as in terms of normal operations. It identifies the attacks layer for malicious and non-malicious threats, and a mitigations layer for recourse actions that are available. One thing to note is that we only desire one of the 6 states, which is counted and unaltered ballots. And so the voting by mail process is, if you look at the detailed model, it is very detailed. However, we were able to kind of distill it into an order of operations to detect when a part of the ballot is going to be affected more. So in this process layer, you start with a ballot being requested by the voter, and then of course the elections office sends it. The voter marks the ballot, returns it, and then it sits at the elections office until election day for processing. And you can see this is the state diagram that you would see for a discrete time Markov chain, just reflecting that our order of operations for the ballot. And going to the 6 potential ballot states, we have, as we said before, counted and unaltered, which is what we want. We then have the potential for masquerade attacks, which cause ballots to be altered, which is not ideal. So those could be counted or not counted. Ballots can be late. And of course, you have ballots that are just simply not returned for a variety of different reasons. So let's look a little closer at what attack graphs are as they existed right prior to this work. So we have on the right here a short, small snippet of an attack graph from the EAC voting by mail system. So here we see the terminal attack nodes X13 and X14 are associated with malicious loss or accidental loss of a ballot. And these are OR gates, meaning 1 or 0 is 1. So if either of these attacks happen, you then have a successful insider attack, which is what we don't want. And so the idea of this work is we focus on the terminal attack nodes, or what's considered an attack surface in other discussions. And so the way to integrate these attack graphs into the Markov chain is for each attack graph, is for each terminal node attack to have where in the process is it impacting, as we can see, which node is it linking to, and then the final ballot status of what is the output of what's going to happen, and the intent. And here we can see we have the process layer and the final ballots. And then we now have all of these connections for where these attacks will come in. One thing to note for masquerade attacks, like X29, it creates a whole separate process internal to the attacks layer of the altered ballot, because once you alter the ballot, it will still go through the same mail process all the way through. And so next we have the recourse actions to combat these malicious and non-malicious attacks. Going through them, the M3 associated with ballot tracks and ballot scout. M5 is that late ballot notification to remind people, hey, you've had your ballot for several weeks, please turn it back in before Election Day. And M7, the use of drop boxes. And so including those mitigations, you now see the full discrete time Markov chain state diagram model. The mitigations create a ability for the ballot to go from an attack state back to the process layer with another attempt to end up in the ideal final ballot state of counted and unaltered. And so we validated this, we created this model for Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the model was validated utilizing the Wisconsin Election Commission General Election Report from 2020. And what we see here is the blue line is the daily reported ballots for Milwaukee County, and the dotted line is our model for the returned ballots on a daily basis as we step through the 49-day election cycle. So once we have this nice model where the two lines align, we can test different scenarios, and we test multiple malicious attack scenarios while varying the mitigations to see exactly what will happen. And as I'm coming across time, we do see, of course, attacks will impact the not counted altered ballots. You have counted altered ballots when you have a masquerade attack. That was X29. We do see that when we lose Dropbox availability, there is an increase in ballots that are late. And to negate the effects of the overall loss of ballots, we can introduce ballot tracks or ballot scouts, which was notified as M3. So that is my time. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to email me. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Carmen. We have time for one short question.
Hi, Carmen. Thank you for the talk. It was very interesting. I had a question about the approach. Why did you decide to go with this approach versus something like interdiction or like an interdiction model, like a game theory model? Is there, like, what are some of those reasons?
So the number one reason why we didn't do an interdiction model is because of the fact that it requires a zero-sum approach and it does not account for the process itself. One of the biggest things that we had to account for was the fact that the mitigations do not perform uniformly at all. So utilizing an interdiction model wouldn't allow us to account for that. So that it was for those reasons that we chose to do this model where we can have a lot of control of stating exactly what state the ballot is in. So that's why we have 30 different possible states that the ballot can be in, as opposed to either one or just 0-1, right? So that was interdiction modeling. It does consider the fact that you can have some defenses, but those defenses are almost always seen as creating the same kind of impact to the system. And one of the things you see here is 3 of the 5 mitigations are shown as states. 2 of them are in the process layer because they're arc varying. So I couldn't really get into too much of the details here in like a quick, 10-minute talk, but if you have any more questions of exactly why, I hope I answered your question for the why I didn't choose interdiction modeling.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen and Adolfo. We'll go now with Raymond. Raymond, make sure you unmute yourself.
Yeah, good morning. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Good. All right. Let me start again. Some pen. Good. All right. So I'm Raymond Kujawi Defed, and I'm here to make a presentation on metrics, especially at the mine planning stage, environmental metrics, and then we'll look at the evaluating the state or the status quo of all the optimization techniques therein. So it's actually in twofold, but the presentation today would concentrate on the environmental sustainability metrics at the mine planning stage, and then we'll comment on evaluating the optimization techniques. The reason is that it is an ongoing research, and it's also a very exploratory one. So this is be the order in which I'll do the presentation. I'll actually introduce it and let you know what we are doing, and then why we're doing it, which is our motivation, and then what we've done so far, and that constitute the methodology. Constitute the methodology, and then what we have found so far and what we intend to do, and also elicit any suggestions, opinions, or commentary from you. So what are we doing? Yes, we are looking at environmental impacts of mining. We want to look at parameters, indicators, or
Raymond.
indices that, hello?
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're still seeing your first slide.
Oh my goodness.
And you may want to make sure you put it in the presentation mode.
Okey-dokey. One moment.
For the sake of time, could we have the next presenter go and then have Raymond go last? Would that be amenable? Just so that Raymond has time to make sure everything's good.
Yes, Sean, thank you. I think that's reasonable. Shanghai, you can.
Sure, I can do that. Just let me share my screen. Just make sure that you can see my screen, right?
Yes, it's great.
Great. Okay, so I'll start. My name is Shun Kuai. I'm a PhD candidate from the Field School of Business at Duke University. Today, I'm going to present our recent paper titled Analysis Advantage in Competitive Technology Adoption, Enhancing Profit and Combating Food Waste via Supply Transparency. So this is joint work with my advisors, Mark Hesking and Jeanette Song. So food waste is actually a big problem for our society because it can cause the waste of land, energy, and many other resources. Actually, in the United States, about 30 to 40% of food is actually wasted. And among all the food waste, about 1/3 of it is generated at retail and consumption stages. So for grocery retailers, the consumer demand for these products like fruits and vegetables is related to the freshness quality of these products. But on the other hand, these retailers often lack supply transparency, which means it's very difficult for them to track the freshness quality of supplied goods, especially for each particular batch of such products. For example, fresh strawberries are usually cooled to 0°C before loading, but the temperature can increase during transportation, especially in the summer months. So it's very hard for grocery retailers to predict the freshness quality of every batch of strawberries. And such uncertainty about freshness quality of supplied goods can also cause mismatch between supply and demand, which further exacerbates the problem of food waste. To increase transparency, some grocery retailers start adopting technologies. So IoT sensors is one example. These sensors can be installed to vehicles to monitor temperature, humidity, and other environmental factors during the transportation for these cold supply chains. And also blockchain is another example that can be used for storing and sharing food supply related data instantly with retailer and its supplier. By adopting these technologies, retailers hope to adjust their inventory more efficiently, reduce food waste, and also potentially attract more consumers by providing such visibility into their food supply chains. But also there are some potential hurdles for adopting these technologies. One biggest issue is accessibility. For example, if the grocery retailer collaborates with many small-scale suppliers, the suppliers may use paperwork to record their transactions, so they don't have infrastructure for adopting these technologies. The other issue is the cost issue. If the grocery retailer wants to deploy IoT sensors for every batch of fresh produced products, including fruit, vegetables, and foods, then the adoption cost can scale up with respect to the market size. So in a competitive environment, fresh produce retailers have to weigh the benefits and cost of adoption simultaneously. Some retailers believe that early adoption might lead to higher investment costs because of error and trial, but also some other retailers think that early adoption can bring more benefits, including greater profit growth. In some analytical papers about cost reduction technologies, they assume the profit increase for the first adopter is strictly higher than the profit increase for the second adopter. But these assumptions in analytical papers are typically assumed for cost reduction technologies in terms of product innovation. For example, a development of new mobile phone doesn't necessarily hold for technologies driving supply transparency in our context. So our research question is, in a competitive fresh produce retail market, does the innovator have any advantages over a follower? If so, under what conditions can we expect such advantages to hold? So to answer these questions, we proposed an analytical framework to study retailers' adoption decisions in a competitive environment in terms of fresh produce retailing. And then we use this analytical framework to identify critical factors affecting the innovator's advantage regarding these technologies. Especially, we pay attention to the retail margin and also the impact of consumer utility boost brought by transparency enabled by these technologies. Now, let me start with our base model. In our base model, we consider two competing retailers, R1 and R2. They sell the same kind of fresh produced product, for example, strawberries, to consumers with retail price P, and then they order this product with wholesale price W. Because the variation in transportation time, storage temperature, and other factors impacting the freshness quality, the freshness state of supply can vary across different orders. So we use random variable X to denote the freshness state of supply. With probability alpha, it takes the high freshness state, otherwise it takes the low freshness state. Then for retail RJ's adoption cost is CJ, then retail RJ can pay this adoption cost to adopt technologies. We use AJ to denote RJ's adoption decision. Based on AJ, there are two types of retailers. If the retailer adopts technology, we call it adopter or a retailer, who can observe the realized freshness state for each order of fresh produced products. If the retailer doesn't adopt technology, then we call it non-adopter or un-retailer, who only knows the distribution of freshness state based on historical data, but doesn't know the exact freshness state for each particular batch. Now let's specify consumer demand, which is also freshness dependent. We consider a continuum of consumers with size lambda, where each item consumer makes their purchase decision independently. So the initial demand for the retailer RJ or the no purchase option is just lambda times the corresponding trust probability. And this trust probability is derived from a utility model. Especially one would say that the trust probability for retailer RJ is increasing in the freshness state of their supplied goods, which means the higher freshness state, the more likely consumers will buy from this retailer. And also we consider spillover demand. If the initial demand is not fully satisfied, and some consumers can switch to the competitor retailer, which also causes demand spillover. Now let's specify the sequence events in our model. We have two stages. The first stage is an adoption game. The second stage is an inventory game. So after retailers make their adoption decisions, we consider inventory decisions of these retailers. And there are various inventory ordering cycles. For each order cycle, at the very beginning, freshness state of supplied goods is realized. The retailers place orders based on their own available information. After they place orders, order quantities arrive and consumer demand is realized. At the end of the cycle, leftover inventory expires and unsatisfied demand is just lost. In both stages, retailers are profit maximizing. So now we can start talking about innovators' advantage for profit. Because they have adoption decisions in the first stage, there are three cases. Either they are both adopters, that's case AA. One is adopter, the other is not the adopter, that's case AN. If both are N retailers, that's case NN. For simplicity, we use capital Pi sub J sub I to denote expect profit of I retailer in the case J. So I can be either type and J can be one of the three cases. So what's the profit increase for the innovator in our model? Here, we refer to the unique adopter in the marketplace as the innovator. So suppose they are both N retailers. The expect profit for the retailer is pi sub N sub N. In this case, R1 adopts technology, then R1 becomes innovator. R1's expect profit increases to pi sub AN sub A. Then the difference between these two quantities is just profit increase for the innovator. And similarly, we can define the profit increase for the follower. So in this case, R2 can also adopt technology and become the follower. R2's profit increases to pi sub AA sub A. Then we can define the profit increase for the follower as this equation. We define the innovator's advantage for profit exists if and only if the profit goals for the innovator is strictly greater than follower's profit goals. So the natural question is, when does such advantage for profit exist? We show that if the retail margin is low, specified by this condition, then we indeed observe the innovator's advantage for profit. The reason is because the spillover capture effect. So when the retail margin is low, the non-adopter tends to understock, and such understocking behavior will make some consumer demand unsatisfied. So some consumers will encounter stockouts when flow to the competitor retailer. In this case, if one retailer becomes innovator, then she can capture spillover demand by prediction of stockouts through supply transparency. In comparison, if the retail margin is high, there's no innovator's advantage for profit. We also consider the value of transparency for consumers. The A retailer can share journey of fresh produced products with consumers, for example, by labeling each box of fresh produced product with a QR code for consumers to access such information. We show that if the utility of consumer is indeed boosted by additional information, including product scavenging and carbon footprint, then we can also observe innovator's advantage for profit. Here, the reason is because of the market expansion effect. Because consumers enjoy higher utility when retailer adopts technology and enjoys supply transparency. Technology adoption also influences consumer choice behavior, which means innovator can get a greater market share growth than the follower, which also means the innovator can get more profit increase than the follower. So finally, I extended our studies on innovation advantage to other dimensions. In the low return margin, we show that the innovator can always get more increase in consumer surplus and demand fill rate than the follower. But in the high margin case, if and only if consumer utility is boosted, then the innovator can get more reduction in food waste and more increase in consumer surplus. So finally, I summarize my contributions on this slide, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Shenghua. We do not have time for questions about your talk, and I will welcome Raymond back to continue where he left off. And we can see the right screen now, but make sure you unmute yourself.
Yeah, good morning once again. That was a slight technical hitch. I had two screens and one dominated. So we are off to go now. So as I was saying, we'll be looking at environmental sustainability metrics in the mine planning and then comment on the second stage, which is evaluating the state of optimization techniques. And the reason is that our research is exploratory and is also ongoing. So this was the order I was going to do the presentation in, or this is the order I am doing the presentation. We'll look at a quick intro. I'll tell you what we have been doing, which is actually, and then what we have done, and also what we have found so far. And so we are looking at environmental impacts of mining, and we're going to look at indicators. We're thinking of parameters, indicators, and indices that may promote sustainability, especially at the mine planning stage. And as operations research people, we think of better ways to work on the status quo. According to research from the Minerals Education Coalition, according to research from the Minerals Education Coalition, every American born will need 3.02 million pounds of minerals in their lifetime. And this is 2017 data, which 2020 is actually 3.19. Well, somebody may say, well, I'm not going to give birth or I wouldn't have children, so may not care. But yes, as long as you are using any electronic gadget, they all rely on minerals. And so iPhone, for example, or an Android phone relies on 46 elements to function. So it means we all need to be concerned about where we get our minerals from. That presupposes that mining is very important or is an inevitable activity for our sustenance. And in the industry, there is a cliche that safe or except oxygen that we breathe, every other thing is mined. And American Hard Rock Society puts it in a very succinct way that if it is not grown, it must be mined. And all that are even grown, for example, in the agricultural industry, we use equipment that are made from mining, the tractors and the combine harvesters. So mining is inevitable. However, mining has had some, mishaps, some, accidents. And so we have concerns. We have communities that oppose it. We have anti-coalitions that are established to oppose it. And an example is by Conde in 2017, documenting the entire, across the globe, the distrust towards mining regulatory authorities, mining companies, and what have you. Also, Walter and Wagner have documented an existence of an entity, a coalition that is against mining. Now, our question is, what if there is, some kind of trade-offs that, satisfy all parties? Anti-mining coalition, environmentalists, mining companies, regulators, and the communities. And that's where we come in, because there is history of sustainable mining. In 1993, there was a discovery made here between the stream and the road. However, there was an understanding between the regulators, the community, and the mining company, and in 3 years, it was mined. As you can see, there's no damage to the stream nor the road. And after the mining, everything was, stabilized and land was reclaimed. So there is an example of sustainable, responsible mining that we can all follow. So what did we do? We looked at literature from 1990 down to today, and we used certain keywords. As you can see, mine planning dominated, and we started from 1990 because that is when the World Commission on Environment and Development came out with the term sustainability, and everybody caught on. However, after COVID, we realized that sustainable mining has dominated, and we still have environmental metrics in mine planning line 0. However, environmental metric is between sustainable mining and mine planning. The reason being that environmental metrics is being used by even finance, banking, and computer scientists. So this is what literature gave us. And we went into literature with a framework. We asked a few questions and we're able to sieve them down into different stages. So we identified that there are three major resources that constitute environmental metrics: water use, whether in quantity or in quality, land use, and then the big one is energy use. These three dominated. However, we identified a fourth one, which has to do with biodiversity and all the efforts put in to minimize dust and noise. Now, all others fall under the first three or are derivatives of the first three. Energy consumption controls, the size of the mine, constitute the quantum of energy used, and also how much greenhouse gas is being given off. We also realized that current practices by the industry is MPV driven. So mining engineers use traditional environmental impact assessments and life cycle assessment to design the mines. And if they realize that whatever they can do can give them, let's say, 5 million, and the damage is 500, they go for that. So currently, there is no consensus on the use of environmental metrics. That's what we have identified. The application is inconsistent and varies across mines. A different mine does it differently, and it depends on the company's policy and also the country or regulation. So the usage of metrics is very arbitrary at the moment. We also identified three potential stages for integration of environmental metrics. We can actually put them in in our optimization model, or we can actually quantitatively assess them or qualitatively evaluate them. So we have asked ourselves whether we can move forward with something like this. Can we use specific indicators to improve performance at the mine? Those are the questions we are yet to interrogate. And then at what stage should parameters be utilized to achieve optimal results? And also, we realize that this has policy dimensions globally. So in conclusion, I would say that mining is inevitable. We have established that, but there are trade-offs which we have to identify. Environmental metrics can be integrated and optimized for sustainability. And so we also realize that there is an urgent need for standardized metrics to be integrated so that environmental metrics will be used appropriately. When this is done, operations will be efficient, and then there will be harmony among stakeholders. Well, I couldn't have done this without the help of some of my partners, Kwame Iwa-Ofe at Missouri S&T, Esteban Kubek de la Cruz in Chile, and also Marcos Goyculia, also in Chile. However, my supervisor, the indomitable Dr. Alexander Mary Newman, is also part of the team. And I'll say thank you for your attention. I realize I was running late, so I've run through it. If you have questions, kindly let me know. This is just one of the 14 researches being done by the OWI lab at the Colorado School of Mines, and you are always welcome to give suggestions, questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. And thank you everyone for staying until a little later. I just want to thank all of our speakers for showcasing their research with us today. And I want to invite you again to vote for your favorite sessions today, and to please join us next Monday at the same time for the part B of this competition, where we will have another 5 fantastic MIF students showcasing their research. Thanks again for joining us today, and have a really good day.